Alright, so to cover the kick, what I do is, first of all, I mean, I can start from scratch here, but there's really no reason because it's pretty simple. So what you do is you just load up a sampler. You can load up the EX24 sampler in stereo or mono. I noticed a lot of people tend to do it mono. I'm not really sure why, because I didn't go to school for this, and I've just done everything by the sound, and sound is one of those things that obviously you don't need to be a genius, because if it sounds good, then you're doing it right. I mean, if it sounds like shit, you're fucking not doing it right. You know what I'm saying? There's obviously something wrong. So what I do for my kick is I just make my first track, and I load the ESX24 sampler. Now, in my sampler, I already have a preset right here that has some of my favorite kicks. Now, I do not use any samples other than my kicks and snares. I'm a big 909 and 808 fan, so what you can do, I mean, you can use a synth kick, you can make your own kick, you can do whatever you want at the end of the day, as long as you compress it and EQ it proper so it has the right punch and the right sound. That's the most important part. But in mine, I went to edit. If you go to edit in here, you can load all your samples. So I got various like kick samples in here. Like I got a different kick almost on every single, loaded on every single keyboard. So this is kind of like my pre one. This is what I do just when I'm filling out a song. So I have various kicks loaded. That way I can kind of get a feel for which one I want to use in the actual song. And then later you can actually spread the kick over multiple octaves to give it kind of like a low and high. So you make it go boom, boom, boom. That's the way I do it. It depends on the genre. I mean, when I mess around with some hardstyle songs or some hardcore songs, I obviously use a synth kick because those genres focus more on the kick and they're more kick driven. And using a synth kick gives you more control to pitch it up and down and fuck with the frequency a little bit and add some more dynamics to your kick. But dubstep, the kick is not so much dynamic. Most of the dynamics come from like your wobbles and synths and stuff like that. So I just use basic samples. Like I got a lot of 909 and 808 samples. That's pretty much all you need, really. So load up your samples, get them cracking, draw out a pattern similar to this. Nothing too crazy yet. It's just the first pattern I got going. But yeah, the most important thing to make your kick sound authentic, especially if you're using just basic samples like 808s and 909s, is the EQ. So at the very top of your channel, you're gonna need to load an EQ. The built-in Logic one's pretty good. I also use Ozone. Ozone 5 is also really, really good. But for some things that are pretty simplistic, like a kick, for example, I use the Logic built-in EQ, stereo EQ. It's a nice EQ, and it even has an analyzer. So I have a bunch of presets in Logic, so it kind of allows me to cheat a little bit without being a genius. So if you click right here, if you have presets in your Logic, you can go to drums and go to punchy kick 1 or punchy kick 2 and just kind of listen to the sound. One of the kicks is a little more punchy with a little more high end. One of them has a little more low end. So if you go to punchy kick 02, it has a little more high, a little more snap to it. And that's kind of the feel I'm looking for in this song. So the only thing I'm going to do different in this preset is I'm going to take out a little of the low end. Not too much, because I still want my kick to have some power in it. I just don't want too much low end, because obviously in this low end area, I'm going to have my wobbles and my sick bass and stuff like that. So I don't want it to really bleed too much into that region. So see how it kind of tapers down here as it's coming to the low end? That's kind of how I want it, so my mix doesn't get too dirty or too muddy. After the EQ's in place, I'll throw on some compression. Once again, I'll just use the dynamic Logic built-in compressor. And once again, if you go to presets here, it saves a lot of time instead of custom tuning the release and attack and whatnot. And go here to kick drum. And with a kick drum, you always want a really fast release, obviously, because it's supposed to be really punchy. So you can kind of see Logic set all that stuff up for us automatically. You can pause this video at any time to look at these settings and, you know, do it yourself or make your own presets if you don't already have them. And just, there's also a second one here that kind of gives it a little different kind of punchiness. It kind of has more low end to it, so kind of more low end bleeds through with this one. But I want it to just be really punchy, so I'm gonna go with the first one. That's more of a snappy, punchy kick. And obviously the second thing that's really important while you're here on the mixing board is making sure that your individual channels are not clipping, and you also want to keep stuff low to give yourself a decent amount of headroom when you go to your final mixing and mastering of the song. That's why some of these channels are so low. Give myself a lot of headroom so I can mix it and master it down. One of the big mistakes I made when I started producing was having everything too loud. Even though everything wasn't clipping, it still wasn't clipping, it was just, everything was just too loud. So when the final mix, there wasn't that much dynamics. It was pretty much over mastered, so to speak, because everything was too loud and there wasn't no dynamics because you couldn't feel instruments coming in and out of play because they were all just too loud. So I kind of learned to turn everything a little bit lower now and let the mastering track do its job like it's supposed to later on in the mastering process. But also, if you do send it to mastering, you know, whoever's mastering the song is going to need that headroom and stuff so they could make any adjustments they need to make. So it's better to have it a little lower than too loud and clipping. Let's throw a snare in here. Whoops, wrong one. I'm gonna snare this bitch. With the snare, it's pretty much a very similar process. I have a pattern drawn out right here with the snare. You can see the kick and snare together right here. Whoa, lagging a little bit. Okay, so with the snare, very similar process. I also loaded ESX24 with a bunch of my favorite snares in here. Some from just 808s and 909s, some of your typical basic snares. And that's all you really need. I mean, if you're gonna, you know, there's a lot of sample packs out there and a lot of stuff like that. And honestly, a lot of those sample packs are taking basic 808s and basic 909s, and they're just adding their own compression and own EQing to make them sound more high-pitched, more distorted, more snappy, more blah, blah, blah. So honestly, if you're going to get a sample kit, if you're going to use them, I would suggest using just a basic 808 or 909 kit that's super clean, that doesn't have distortion, doesn't have any effects on them, doesn't have any of that stuff. That way you can add those effects and you can tailor them to how you want. Because if you're using a sample that already has distortion on it and you don't want distortion, you can't just take it away because it's a pre-recorded sample. So I prefer starting clean with clean samples that are plain like this and improving on them myself with my own dynamics. So load your samples up. Save it. I like to use presets because when you make presets like this, it may take you long to set up the presets. It might take you a whole day to set up all your favorite kicks, set up all your favorite snares, things like that. But I can guarantee you, if you spend the time and make presets like that and save like a template in Logic and save all those presets, it's going to save you countless hours every time you start another track. Similar process here. We go to the EQ on the snare, and once again I use just the built-in Logic EQ. So you can go to the drums, and Logic has some presets for the snare, which is actually pretty good, like a rock snare drum. It's pretty good, but Honestly, it sounds a little too high for my taste for what I'm looking for right now, so I'll reset that there. Snares, I kind of like to boost between right here in this range, between the 100 and 200 range or so. You'll see, because that's kind of where it is already. So you're just kind of playing off of that. And then you can go, the more you go towards the 100, it's obviously a deeper snare. Then the more you go towards the 200, it's obviously a higher sounding snare. So for this, I want a little meat in my snare, so I'm going to go ahead and add the EQ right here a little bit to give it that little meaty sound that I'm looking for that it's missing. And then I do want a little bit of high in the snare, but not too much because I'm going to have the hi-hats playing with it. So I'm just going to add a little bit right there. That's about good. That's about where I want it. Yeah, fucking computer fail. So that's good on the snare. Same thing with the compressor. Logic has a built-in snare compression, and that's the one I use just for the snares, so they're punchy. Once again, similar to a kick, it has a really high, really fast release to make it punchy. Just gonna make sure the snare has headroom and it's not clipping at all, which it's not. That's pretty good. I want a really low-end bassy 808. So earlier, I already have my punchy kick on a track. Instead of trying to put my high or my low-end 808 on the same track, I'm making a new track because obviously I have this track EQ'd out for punchiness. So if I try to put a sub-bass 808 on there, it's not going to shine like I wanted to because I took some of the low end out and it's made for a punchy kick. So I made another track with just a really low end 808 sound on it. You can hear it. I don't know if the video is going to give the bass justice, but it's some pretty fucking heavy bass right there. So the EQing is just a little different for the heavy bass. It's obviously the low end. I just boost the low end a little bit. And sometimes I kind of even go here and take out a little bit in this range, depending on if I want it to punch or if I just want it to just kind of low end bass you. But you can see the low end, that bass right here. This is that sub bass. That shit's through the roof, and that's definitely a panty dropper bass right there. So yeah, I mean, once again, same thing. Just add a little bit of compression on there. Let it kick. Make sure that it's not anywhere near clipping. And whenever it's a sub bass thing, I usually keep it really low, because if you have it turned up too high, it's definitely going to interfere with a lot of other instruments and kind of drown it out once it's in the mix with everything else. So yeah, we got some hi-hats with the snare and the kick. So everything's kind of coming together. With my hi-hats, since it's a hi-hat, I obviously added just some high end on there. It's actually a little too much. I'm just going to boost this slightly. Like right there. That's good. Move anything else. There shouldn't be nothing else coming through there anyways, as you can see from the analyzer, but just take it out just in case. And then I put a little stereo spread on there. That's the Logic stereo spread. And I just have it spreading the medium and high spread a little bit, just to kind of give those hi-hats a little bit of a bouncy feel. You can tell they kind of spread out stereo a little bit better like that. And that's pretty much just the simple beat. That's pretty much step one of making a track, is always throw my beat down first. The next videos we'll start covering some of the wobbles and stuff, which is the fun stuff, how we get down with some of these crazy wobbles. So that's about it.